All right, so to represent Unit 2, we decided to go with the short story, and there's a ton of different character types that make up a short story, and we just decided to go ahead and define a few of them here. So, starting off, a flat character is a character who shows little emotion or personality, and they aren't given specific goals or motives. They're often used as background characters, and they usually don't contribute too much to the plot.
Okay, and next would be the dynamic character. That's a character who undergoes significant change throughout the course of the story and holds different viewpoints and motives at the end of the story than what they did at the beginning of the story. It's usually a main character.
Another important character archetype would be the hero. A hero is usually blessed with unnatural circumstances from birth and receives help from the wizard, mentor, or divine power to bring justice to the world. Often undergoes major change as they learn from their journey. The hero is also a foil character to the villain. They usually start with little knowledge of the world or the villain.
Alright, next we have the mentor, who is an experienced character with lots of knowledge in the world. They've usually been in the hero's position before, and they now work to help the current hero to mature and better understand the world.
And finally, although this is not really exactly like a character type itself, direct characterization versus indirect characterization. Direct is statements about the character's more obvious attributes, like their physical appearance or personality, that are directly stated by the author, and indirect is inferences about the character's deeper motivations and inner ideals through inferences that the reader can make. So this is Blinded Demon Slayer by myself, and it's the example story that I chose as a spin-off of Demon Slayer for my short story project. So we start with the characters. This is our main character in the story. He's a demon from Demon Slayer. He's a round and dynamic character, and some direct characterization would be he's tall, he's muscular, he's grayish skinned, and he's got Suzumi drums in his stomach, shoulders, front chest, and hips. And then there's some slightly like indirect characterization, but we'll get more into detail on this later. And there's character 2, who is the antagonist in this story, but protagonist in the original continuity. And then we can go to setting. So the setting of this is in Japan in the Taisho era, 1912 to 1926. The story of Demon Slayer takes place across Japan. Different cultures, foods, levels of technologies, clothing, and more appear throughout the series. In this short story segment, Kyogai, which is the demon, observes the world mainly from his home and weaponized mansion. This place is called the Suzumi Mansion, and its architecture is manipulated by the demon himself when the Suzumis on his body are activated. Its walls and ceilings can invert or rotate, along with summon sharp claws attacks and around the house. The mansion is dimly lit with lanterns covering the walls and writing scattered across the mansion. Functioning as somewhat of a maze, the mansion moves around and shifts rooms every time a Suzumi is struck. Kyogai, the demon, lives in this mansion and brings surrounding humans into it to devour them when he can. Other demons roam the halls, unwanted by Kyogai, trying to steal his prey, as demons don't work together. And here are some pictures. And onto the plot.
Okay, so starting off with our conflict type, we're going to have a man versus society. In a man versus society type of plot, that means you're going to have your main character usually facing societal norms or other specific uncontrollable circumstances that they're placed in.
And here is a summary of what would happen in my narrative.
Starting off with an exposition is the very beginning of the story that usually sets the baseline. It's going to be giving you your setting, your time period, all of the elements of the story that you need to understand. It's usually going to introduce your protagonist, and then it's also going to include the inciting incident, which is when you first, which is what sets the story in motion at the very beginning. Next, we have the rising action. This is where the action starts to take place in the story, where noticeable events are going to start happening, and this is going to be leading up to the climax. The climax of the story is the changing point. It's the turning point of the story where usually something's going to be revealed, or there's going to be a plot twist, or everything's going to get flipped upside down, or even if it's completely expected, the story's going to completely change narratives. Either a character is going to die, or it's just going to take on a different storyline after that. The falling action is going to be after your climax, and it's going to be leading up to the resolution of the story. It's going to start tying up loose ends, and it's going to give you the brief rundown of what's going to happen after the climax that leads up to the final ending place of the story. It's usually going to be shorter than the rising action. And finally, for your resolution, all the puzzle pieces are going to start falling into place. and every character is going to be sorted out, and there's going to be no more character change at this point.
From here, we go to my writing sample, which is my version of the narrative in a different perspective from the original story, and the required elements, which include some of the setting and some indirect characterization, which would rival the direct characterization, but this is more of an inference-based description. And then finally, it's just the title, which is an explanation on why the title is both figurative and literal.